All right, so we're going to now go to BJ Costello and Lan Tantillo, and they're here to talk about the Albany Waterway collaboration that they're currently working on. So, gentlemen, thanks for joining us whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Zach. This has been very informative so far. It's interesting for me. I've been here over 50 years, and just to listen to some problems are the same and some are a lot different. We appreciate the invitation. We're excited to speak to you about a transformative, collaborative, inclusive, economic, impactful idea to transform Albany, to generate the vibrancy that's missing today and to benefit the capital region. We call this the Albany Waterway. And Lynn Tantillo, my ally here, a renowned artist in the Hudson Valley, is going to lay out our concept for you and ask you to send us any questions, support, and input. If 200 years ago, when none of us were here, but as I read it, the 363-mile Erie Canal could be constructed by laborers with rudimentary equipment, denigrated for working on it as Clinton's folly, then in 2022, we believe that a 2-mile waterway through Albany without taking down one building in order to meet the original Lock 1 of the Erie Canal located near the Central Warehouse would generate a rebirth of our city. When I arrived as an outsider in 1969, I was struck by a city that was declining and controlled by a few favored individuals. If you've read Kennedy's book, Roscoe, you'll get a pretty clear impression about what things were like at that time. I quickly realized that we had to create a mechanism to give power back to those who choose to live here and not flee to the suburbs. My response was to found the Pine Hills Neighborhood Association in 1971. And a few years later, to found Cana. I am so happy to see that Cana has blossomed to what it is today. And critics at the time said establishing Cana was a fool's errand. You couldn't do it in Albany. Well, how many times have you heard that? Time has proven otherwise. I believe in the power of citizens to effect positive changes. It is good to be with committed individuals and see the progress that Cana has made. And yet today in downtown where I work, it is depressing, with residents suffering from these conditions, noted recently in the Times Union series on the South End, with outsiders having no reason to come, and with visitors arriving by bus, disheartened by what they observe in the capital city of the Empire State. I serve as chair of the USS Slater, the most visited tourist attraction in the region, with over 15,000 visitors annually. Yet, when they ask me, there is no place for them to walk to get a cup of coffee or to get lunch or anything else. I ride my bicycle from Buffalo to Albany 1 year with Pat Fahey, annually on the Erie Canal. Towns along the way are welcoming, and the waterway has generated housing, restaurants, businesses, and jobs. And yet, when the several hundred riders arrive here, there's a sinking feeling similar to those that the Slater visitors experience, and I'm embarrassed by it. We are at a tipping point, and we need dramatic, impactful change. We seek to educate you tonight, seek your input, and request that you join us as a friend of the Albany Waterway. And with that, Lynn is going to review our concept, and then we can take any questions.
So Zach, I'm going to need for you to let me share my screen.
Sure, Len. I think it's ready to roll for you.
Okay. Can everybody see that?
And if anybody has questions, you can put them in the chat, or we'll take questions at the end. So,
can you see my screen?
Not yet, Len. There you go.
Now?
Yep, you're good. It's coming up now. Yep, there we go.
Okay, all right. This is a program that we put together to give you an idea of where the canal and waterway originated, the idea for it originated. Some of you know that I'm a painter, that I'm a historical painter, and over the last 40 years, I've done a number of paintings of this area. Most of them have been based on old maps. This is a map of Albany that was made by the Dutch in the 1630s. This is the painting that I made of Fort Orange, largely based on that map. This is a map of Albany that was drawn by the English around 1700. It shows the English fort at the top of the hill. And this is the pen and ink drawing that I made from that map. Another map of Albany. This is Albany in the 1750s, during the time of the French and Indian War. And from this map, I made this painting, which now belongs to the Albany Institute of History and Art. We're looking from the Rensselaer side of the river toward Albany. This is Albany at the time of the American Revolution, and the painting that I made of that. Again, Albany this time in the 1850s, and this is the painting that I made of Albany around the time of the end of the Civil War. So you can see that it's a city that kind of developed from a frontier to a booming metropolis. One of the things that all those maps have in common, and something that I noticed every time I worked on this city, is the arc that you see, the shoreline of the Hudson River at Albany. Up until the 1950s, that was a characteristic of the city. After the 1950s, Albany started to fill in that waterfront, and it completely eroded by the end of the 1960s. In 1995, that's 25 or so years ago, I had been kind of looking at these brochures that were made to improve the city, and they vary. They were done by different architects from all over the country. All of them were well-intentioned. Many of them were even implemented to some extent, but they never had much of an impact on the city itself. Granted, sidewalks were repaired, there were facilities utilized, there was the addition of landscaping and benches and all of that sort of thing that gradually deteriorates over time, and then kind of made the whole point of these brochures sort of mute. I kept thinking about the extent that many of these programs went to try to bring the city to the river. And what I kept thinking is, why not bring the river back to the city where it once was? I would make a sketch from time to time for friends who would say, well, how would you do that? I drew on whatever was available. This is a drawing that I made on a napkin. It shows the Hudson River, it shows 787, and it shows how a canal could be built that came in under the highway, down Broadway, and then make its way back out to the Hudson River. It caught the attention of the newspaper. It was promoted on the front page of the Times-Union. So in 1996, this was big news here. But and then, like a lot of these other programs, at the time, Mayor Jennings gave me some money, $15,000, to see if I could develop a more comprehensive package of what the idea was about. So I engaged a couple of friends of mine at the time. Pat Mahoney had been doing city engineering for quite a while at Smith & Mahoney. Landscape architect Bruce Heiser, and Pat had a city planner named Tiag who worked for him. Unfortunately, neither one of Pat Mahoney nor Bruce Heiser has lived to survive to see this evening when I'm getting to present this idea to you. The project had one overriding element, and that was, do not disturb the highway. Do not disturb even a single ramp of the highway, so that traffic would continue uninterrupted. We also had a secondary objective, and that was, do not tear a single building down. BJ mentioned that earlier. So we came up with this idea of a canal that would come in using the existing underpass that would allow maritime traffic to pass under the highway and under the railroad, and then enter the city along Broadway to possibly create a marina in front of the D&H building, the SUNY headquarters building, and then continue down Broadway and then make its way out through a number of marinas and then back out into the Hudson River near where Central Warehouse is located. Well, 25 years have gone by. So what's happened in 25 years? For one thing, that idea never completely went to bed. There were times when the Times Union would do an article, probably spaced out maybe every 5 years. But also, in addition to the fact that the idea was sort of still lingering here in Albany, other cities were kind of busy. Oklahoma City has a canal that was built within that time span. These are images of the canal in Oklahoma City. Providence, Rhode Island probably has one of the most famous canals of recent times. I went to school in Providence, and when I started school there, they were covering this canal up and making it into a bunch of parking lots. And it was completely incredible to me that the city was willing to reverse that process, remove the parking lots, and create this incredible canal, kind of a Venice in America. They have a firewater program once a year that attracts thousands of people. And one of the questions that was coming up even 25 years ago is, what do you do with a canal in the wintertime? Well, there are a number of things. There are a number of canals across America, across North America. This is the Rideau Canal in Canada, and the Canadians know how to use a canal in wintertime. It's a busy place. It has incredible vitality. This is a wonderful photograph of the Ottawa Canal at Christmas time. This is the San Antonio Riverwalk in Texas. This is one of San Antonio's major tourist attractions. It attracts more people than the Alamo. These are various photographs along the way. When I've made this presentation before, people would say, it's an incredible place. I remember sitting there along the waterfront in one of those canopy picnic tables. Chicago has had a series of canals over its entire history. This is the Chicago River Canal running through the city, and it creates an atmosphere in Chicago that's very similar to the atmosphere along the Seine in Paris. So here we are back to reality. Albany, probably the most disastrous eyesore in the city that is going to be living with us no matter what. It's an incredibly well-built structure and an amazing eyesore. These are photographs that I took of the Central Warehouse building not too long ago, and you can see that as you get closer, it doesn't get to be any better looking. The building is amazingly constructed. The interior is massive concrete columns, 4 feet in diameter, supporting a thick reinforced concrete slab structure. This building isn't going anywhere. The incredible thing about the building is that it's an infill, which means that those exterior panels could be knocked out. What you have is that series of columns and slabs, but that outer wall is something that is definitely something that can be adjusted and adapted to different use. So, the building is so incredibly well constructed that these uses can be very diverse. So here I've made an assumption that you kind of infill this possibly as apartments or something like that. The building is so sturdy that additional structures could be added on top of it, additional floors. This is a hypothetical design that shows maybe several restaurants or a terrace of some kind on the roof of Central Warehouse. The views from Central Warehouse are spectacular. So this is the Albany map that I showed earlier, the 1850s map. At the north end of the Albany Basin is the Erie Canal, the entrance of the Erie Canal, Lock 1 and the original Erie Canal Basin. So the idea that we've been pursuing is this is the Hudson River out here, that you could come into the system under 787. This is the renovated Central Warehouse building. There might be some community-oriented structures in here with a refurbished and restored canal basin. So if that was to be something that was undertaken and actually be constructed, this aerial view of the central warehouse area would be converted to something like that. In what you're looking at is the Albany Walkway that's now under construction. There's a little basin there, the restoration of Central Warehouse and reuse of Central Warehouse, the possibility of a North Albany Civic Center in here, commercial, possibly restaurant facilities along the marina, and then public pavilions. Open pavilions that could be used by the public for family reunions, weddings, that sort of thing. There's also quite a substantial amount of open area that could be used for farmers markets, craft fairs, and that sort of stuff. There's enough space inside the marina area itself to accommodate over 100 vessels. So this would be an incredibly transformative project and have what we feel a very positive impact on the city. Again, coming back to the building, if that was ever done, the effect at eye level would be something like this. So here we have a view looking south from the marina. You can see the Civic Center there on the right side of the image and the little restaurant facility that might be built here. There's one of the pavilions in the background. Here's a picnic area, and then all the boating activity that you see there. One of the first things that came up when this was proposed was, this is a great idea, but how do you build it? How could you even take something like this on? So we thought, well, you don't have to build the whole thing at once. You can build various pieces of it. For instance, you could build just the south part of this project. You could come in under the railroad and the highway, and you could pass right in front of the SUNY headquarters building and have a marina there. That would be right at the foot of State Street, right in the heart of downtown Albany. This is a sketch that I made 25 years ago of what that might be like. For those of you who are familiar with downtown, this is the Federal Building, State Street is over here, and this is Broadway over here. So kind of taking this aerial perspective, you can see the track of Broadway here, and you can see the SUNY building here. That would be transformed into a waterway. I've even added the half moon here as a feature because it appears that the half moon is going to be coming back to America. The Dutch are going to be giving it back to the Americans, and it has no home port. And I thought that would be an ideal place to keep it. You could have it here year round. This is the painting that I made 25 years ago of the marina in front of the SUNY building. So another possibility to get this project going, I think one of the questions that Mayor Jennings asked me was, all of that's great, Len, but how and when could we start it? I said, Mayor, you could start this project next week for $10,000. And he said, how would I do that? And my answer to that was, unearth Lock 1 of the Erie Canal. So this is the lumber district. We're now looking, we were looking at the area south of the canal a few minutes ago. This is north of the canal. Huck Finn's warehouse is out here. This was the lumber district. The Erie Canal just made its way out toward Waterford in this direction. And these were slips for the barges that were carrying lumber north and south on the Hudson River. That's Lock 1. It's been documented, very well documented in city records. These are Sanborn maps that show the lock, give its dimensions, show the gates, show some of the facilities around it. Lock 1 is located right there. There's Central Warehouse. This is Modern Press. 787 Hudson River is out here. There's the railroad bridge. We know it's here because in 2002, two professors from Union College, Professor Wolf, who was working with Dennis Foley, also a professor there, and these two men got permission to dig in this corner of the lot that was occupied by Modern Press, and they dug a very, very shallow ditch. And in that shallow ditch, they weren't even down 1.5 feet. They hit the top of the lock. And the stones of the top of the lock are in perfect condition. They even found parts of the wooden lock gate, also pretty much intact. And the reason for that is, this is one of the last photographs of Lock 1 that was taken in Albany. This lock was buried. They just covered it over and put a road over the top of it. This is the way it looked in the 1850s. So, in kind of executing this idea of excavating Lock 1, you'd have to decide who owns the lock. Is it owned by the city, the state? Is that small portion of it that's under Modern Press owned by the owner of that property? You'd have to secure funding for all the phases. You'd have to determine the location and condition of the lock, which would mean test holes being dug in different locations to see that it's there and what the condition of it is. Once you resolve the property issues, there'd be a little bit of an adjustment to vehicular traffic, not very much. And then the big task, excavate the site and restore the lock, and then ultimately figure out who would take care of it, how would it be maintained. Again, this is a schematic plan of that area. That's where Lock 1 is located. And you can see that it has incredible access, as it naturally would have had, to the river and to that area where the Erie Canal Basin was. So it's possible to dig up that lock and create a park around it. That's it, just a park around it. And this is what I was telling the mayor. Okay, for your $10,000, you start to dig. The public is going to become fascinated. They're going to go down there as the archaeologists uncover the lock. So it's going to attract attention right away. And then if funding could be secured, a park could be built around Lock 1. And if that was the case, it would be an amazing tribute to the entrance of what was America's incredible national treasure, the Erie Canal. So we have Albany today with no access to the river except for the Corning Preserve, which provides some limited activity throughout the year, but as far as the city goes, not much of an impact. And I want you to remember that arc that I talked about earlier, the shoreline of the Hudson River that came way in before all of this Albany Basin was filled in and covered over and built on. So that's really the program. And BJ and I can try to answer your questions as you see fit.
Well, thank you, Zach.
Thank you very, very much. Does anybody have questions? Want to raise your hand? Gloria?
Hi, Len. I loved your presentation. It looked fascinating.
Thank you.
My concern is, how would you coordinate it with the Albany Riverfront Collaborative that wants to hopefully someday knock down 787 and have it at ground level? I mean, you wouldn't be able to access boats under 787, or you'd have to have a bridge. I mean, because that's another wonderful project that I think would really help the city. But I understand yours is more like a river walk in San Antonio, so I get that. But I was wondering, is there some way that you can look at it, we can combine both and still have the best parts of both of those potential projects?
Thanks, Gloria. I'll answer that. So the answer is yes, we are working with the Riverfront Collaborative folks. Scott Townsend, who was here last month and spoke to you. We're working very closely with them. And we believe that both of these projects can be done. The difference, I think, at the end of the day is if people have more access to the river, they have more access to the river. When you get to the river, what is there? Well, the river. This has the benefit of creating jobs, a vibrancy to downtown Albany, which today I ride my bike through. I have my business there. It is, you can fire a shot down in the middle of the day and you don't hit anybody. So this would create restaurants. It would create excitement. It would in the city of Albany itself. And I think the city is at a tipping point, as I said. It's, to me, I've been here 50 years. It's a scary proposition where we are right now. And if we don't do something really dramatic, and I think both of these can work together, and a bridge is just a mechanical thing to do. It's not, it's not recreating America. And again, I always go back to, and by the way, I'll just say this and hope I don't offend anybody, but if we can spend $1 billion giving it to the people in Buffalo who are billionaires, who pay their quarterback $100 million a year of our money to keep the bills there, can we find a little money for downtown Albany to create the vibrancy that we're talking about? Because otherwise, people come here from all over the world. I'm really very embarrassed when I bring them here and they say, so this is really the capital city of the Empire State? So something really dramatic has to happen. And this idea that Lynn has put together and presented tonight, we think is an answer, and definitely we work very closely with the Riverfront Collaborative. Thank you for your question.
Yeah, thank you. That's a wonderful answer, because that's how I would like to see it, because I was very thrilled when I first learned about the Riverfront Collaborative. I've only been living up here for about 15 months, and I thought this is terrific. It really needs it, because the access to the river, I would go to the Corning Preserve and park and then walk up the Empire Trail there. And I'm like, okay, 787 highway noise is horrible. I have some nature, but it's never really, it's not a beautiful attraction that says, let's just go there for the sake of going there. I'm going there for my walk, my exercise. I get some nature, but I have the roar of the highway traffic, and I'm like, I got to tune that out. And to see the marinas and to feel like it's more like San Antonio's Riverwalk would definitely bring a lot of people in. I would love to see that before in my lifetime up here, since I came up here to retire. I'm all for it. And
yeah,
I would like to do something to help. So
thank you. Well,
if you need anything, let me know. I can help.
We are putting together, we have incorporated as the Albany Waterway, Inc.
Okay.
And that creates a lengthy thing for us. We've also created a group of friends. Paul Grondell, who some of you are familiar with, he's a writer, heads the Writers Institute. Chet Alpaca, and a number of other people have, Benita Zahn, have joined us as friends. And we now have over 100 people who are known as the Friends of the Albany Waterway. My email is the easiest way, because we also have a website under revision, so it's down for the moment. But I've got an email that's just, Zach, you can perhaps send that out. It's
Sure.
Put it in your minutes. It's bcostello@hinmanstraub.com. And we are very grateful to my friend Pat Fahey, who is advocating to include an engineering feasibility study for this. As I say, she and I biked across from Buffalo to Albany, and she saw very clearly the impact that water has on these communities, which when you get to Albany, again, it's embarrassing to tell 500 people that there's no place to get a cup of coffee. So that's where we are.
Thank you very much.
We're all about collaboration. We've also had a number of meetings with people in the South End, and that has proven to be very fruitful also, because we want to open up that neighborhood, again, which has been subject to the Times Union articles. We want to open that up and create, and we listen a lot. We don't, this is our idea, but there's a lot of input that we're taking. So we appreciate your question. Thanks, Gloria. Thanks, Zach.
Sure. Anybody else have questions? Okay, great presentation, Lan and BJ. I really appreciate your time. Very, very. Oh, we have one more question from Holly Katz, real quick.
Okay. What are the next steps that you're taking in conjunction with the Riverfront project?
So the first thing is to create our friends group, and that includes a lot of people with a lot of different backgrounds. And we would welcome you, Holly, by the way, and your husband, to join that group, because out of those kind of conversations, we get things. For example, when I was meeting with the individual who is looking to take over the McDonald's down at the foot of Madison, right? Jackson. He said, I used to be in finance. I think this could be done by floating bonds, municipal bonds, to build this thing. So that's one of the questions. How do you pay for it? And again, sometimes waiting for, you would think there would be federal money available. And Congressman Tonko has been talking a good game, but we haven't seen a penny. Did I say that right? We haven't seen a penny. We've had a lot of meetings with the city. Again, the mayor is very favorable about this, but says I really have no money to do this. So the next step really is to have a meeting of the Friends. We would probably do this in the Huxley Theater, which is in the State Museum. Anybody who wants to be invited can be, and we'll also advertise it. And there we would have a general conversation like this in more detail and get people's ideas and input, and then we would go forward because we've got to find the money, and we've just got to continue to push this. I really believe if we don't do it, I just don't see where the city's going. Things are just so depressing to me. My email, by the way, is bcostello, COSTELLO @Hinman, HINMAN, Straub, STRAUB.com.
We got another question from Marsha.
Another question.
Hey, BJ, I'm really impressed by what I just saw. I was here last month and I saw Scott's presentation, and I was sort of overwhelmed by what it appeared would need to be done to overhaul downtown the way he presented it. This seems to me to be sort of easier to sell. It looked a lot more friendly, and I would guess that it might be a little less costly. I have no idea. Am I getting the right picture? Have you guys gotten to that point where because as Gloria said, it seems like you're going in two different directions. He wants to rip out the 787 and put it someplace else. I think your way seems to be a lot easier. Am I getting the right drift?
Yeah. I think even 25 years ago, when I first began working on this project, we took a very realistic approach. What is doable? And we based what is doable on what other cities were doing. And so that's how this idea sort of came to be. I don't see, there are a number of things that about that other project that I like, a few things I don't like so much, but the thing that I do think is possible, we haven't worked on this with them, but the idea of slowing traffic down on the highway, of creating a boulevard in Albany somehow, that's been done in other cities, and that's been pretty effective. That would cut down on noise, that would slow the traffic down, it would allow people to cross the highway. So I see that as a possibility. Getting back to what Holly mentioned earlier, when we were talking about what the next steps are, one of the things that we need to do, and this is one of the reasons why we're trying to get support from the city and support from the state, and support from the federal government, is we need to do, before we go much further, a feasibility study to find out how possible is it to dig up a portion of Broadway. What does this do to city utilities? Where are the problems? Now, 25 years ago, Pat Mahoney was the city engineer. And what he discovered, now we didn't have a lot of money, so he only kind of superficially looked at it. But one of the things that he discovered at that point was that in most of Broadway, the utilities are grouped on one side of the street, not completely across the expanse of the street. So if that's the case, we had always intended to leave some traffic pattern, some vehicular traffic pattern for parts of Broadway, but that would open up the possibility of using another stretch of Broadway for boating traffic. So we need to do this feasibility study. As far as restoring Lock 1, I think that's a lot less of a problem. We basically, in the program, we outlined the approach to that project, which I think would be maybe an incentive for us to go further.
And we've talked to developers like Jeff Buell, who's very interested in that particular corner of it. So Maura put up my correct email, bcostello@hinmanstraub.com. And so the projected cost of the feasibility study, well, Pat Fahey is now working on that and trying to secure funds to get that done. I think she's somewhere around $500,000. And as far as Oklahoma City goes, if you want to Google Bricktown, Oklahoma City, Bricktown, just like it sounds, you'll see, and I believe what they did is they publicly funded that, and they have been overwhelmed by the amount of benefit coming back into the city by reinvigorating the city and causing all of, property values go up, people spend money, all the things you would expect and hope could happen in Albany. It should happen. It's one of the most famous rivers in the world and one of the most famous cities in the world. And yet we have what we have. So we get frustrated talking about this, but in any event.
Let's take one more question from Michelina with Assembly Member Fahey's office.
Thanks,
Michelina?
Megan.
Hi there, it's Michelina from Assemblywoman Fahey's office. Good to see you both on here, and thank you for, describing and showing all these beautiful historic pictures of all the different versions of the waterfront in the past couple hundred years. I just wanted to jump in to clarify that number. So the feasibility study, the legislation that would authorize the Department of Transportation to conduct this engineering feasibility study is 1.5 million.
Oh, there you go.
And the Assemblywoman is, pushing to advocate for that inclusion in the budget, which unfortunately still hasn't passed, but we're working on it. We actually just want to mention as well that in preparing this letter to the governor, we've had tremendous support from local community groups, which is wonderful. Over 60 signatories. And so this is definitely something that folks are on board for, which is awesome.
Yeah, I had a chance to speak to the governor, and I won't say she rolled her eyes, but she basically said Albany has got a lot of potential that's unrealized. So she clearly understands that.
Absolutely.
All right. Thanks, Len. Thanks, BJ, very much.
Thank you, Zach. Zach, you send me your address. I'll drop the book over.
Okay, we'll do. All right. So tonight.